Hi everyone, Azman here. Thank you for tuning in. This is a new episode on my Teacher Talk with AZB series. In fact, it's the second episode. It's been a while since I was able to do one. My first one was Why Become a Teacher. This is going to be titled The Power and the Risk Involved in Being a Teacher. Now, to get into the matter, first I'd like to start with this quote by Aristotle, famously on the internet at least. Teachers who educate children deserve more honor than parents who merely gave them birth, for the latter provided me a life, while the former ensure a good life. So, I think that this is stemming from the idea that even if you take a lot of religious philosophers, right, even Lord Buddha or even Prophet Muhammad, right, these these individuals had many teachers, and learning has always been a part and parcel of any remarkable person's life. Even if you take all these more recent successful people that a lot of youngsters go behind, uh, most of these people pitch how they learned, pitch books as a very fundamental learning tool. But other than that, they talk a lot about how teachers were able to impact their life. So, uh, and there's also this saying that parents are your first teachers. So I think that also connects beautifully with this idea that teachers really can influence a lot, right? Teachers have a lot of power, and that brings me to the main discussion today: the power and the risk involved with being a teacher. When I say a variant of, what I mean is there are different variations, right? There are trainers, there is coaching, there is mentoring. So there are different forms of sharing knowledge and expertise and experience. So whatever variant you belong to, there's power involved and there's risk involved. And I want to try and take a look at of both of these angles in retrospect to each other, because I believe that the awareness of the power and risk of being a teacher is critical to being a good teacher. It's actually part of my Good Teacher series. Let's take a look at the first point. See, one of the most powerful things about being a teacher is that you have a platform. You have a platform, you have a ready-made platform. Well, most of the things that come to you as a teacher is ready-made. You have a platform. Now, when I started teaching, I had this stage, and it was a literal platform. But it is also a figurative idea that I'm telling you here, is that you have a platform, a very powerful place in correlation to or in relation to your students, because having that platform is not something that everybody does. And when you have that platform, it puts you in a powerful position. But the risk involved in it is that you have to be confident. So this whole thing about stage fear and confidence stems because fundamentally, if you are not confident, it's very difficult to be a teacher. So I've seen in my life, I've seen teachers with 3,000 or 4,000 odd students. They just have one long stage. Okay, I'm talking massive classes. Right? Literally, there are thousands and thousands of students. So these people, like Professor Nimal Hettiarachchi, like Mr. Kesiri Vitanage, right? These individuals are very highly confident individuals. And for me personally, the biggest audience, the biggest platform I've had is in the UK when I addressed a crowd of 17,000 people, and I couldn't believe my eyes when I was on the stage. Like, like, as far as I could see, there were people, and you cannot literally, like, you can't even recognize one single face when you have that much of people in front of you. Okay, so having that platform is a very powerful thing, and I genuinely feel like aspiring teachers who people who want to be teachers, if you're an individual who want to be a teacher, who is training to be a teacher, understand that you have this platform and it puts you in a powerful position, and to operate in that platform well, you have to be confident. Okay, so that's an idea, that's an area that you need to be very conscious about. The second thing about being powerful as a teacher is you have the audience. And when I say audience, I'm not just saying that there are a bunch of people who are listening to you. Even YouTube videos as a, now if you're my audience, right? If you're watching this video, you're my audience, but it's not exactly that. This audience is ready to engage with you. They are attentive. They're really attentive because they don't want to miss any words that are coming out of your mouth. They don't want to miss anything that you're writing on the board. They're really engaging. They're giving their best. Even if the audience is a kinesthetic audience or a more verbal, more oratory focused audience, if you're a person who is doing a lot of writing and who is dictating a lot of things, they'll try to tune in to the best of their ability. And that is a powerful thing because your audience is trying hard to engage with you. Not everybody has that opportunity. So understand that having that audience who are ready to engage with you, who are already attuned to the fact that they walk into the class or they walk into the session to listen to you, to grab the things that you say, to absorb the things that you say, that is like the most powerful thing in the world, isn't it? And the risk in comparison is that you have to be empathetic. You have to understand the mindset of the audience. So the good thing about that is teachers find it easy because they've been students. Okay, now for me, one of the things that I teach is ACCA, but I was once upon a time, well, kind of, right, at least to certain subjects, I have been a student, so I know the mindset of a student sitting in that classroom looking at the teacher, and that is very important because empathy is critical to the success of your delivery. Okay, now after a decade of teaching, for me, I have built, I'm not saying I'm perfect in it, but I have built this certain aptitude where I can gauge, I can look at a classroom and I can sort of understand if they really get what I'm saying. If not, I'll repeat it. Right? Sometimes I even take the effort to just go through the entire session. Even if I've covered like 1 hour worth of content, I'll redo the entire content. If I feel that the class, the session, the group of students who are in the class haven't really understood that concept. And as time passes by, with experience, you get better at it. But this empathy factor is very important. Understanding the audience. It could be the context. There could be a day in the classroom where you come into the class, your audience is very disturbed. And you're not, because you were not privy to a certain piece of information that your audience was. And they know that information, you don't. Like, for example, when a really sad situation happened, I was not really attentive about the news of the day. And I walked into the class and the students already knew because they have their phones and they were checking all that. So it was the students who informed me about half an hour later because I started teaching. I walked into the class, I just started teaching. I was going through a lot of complicated ideas because it was a stressful situation and I had a lot of ground to cover. So I was going through a lot of complicated ideas, and what happened was about half an hour later, I realized that the class was really not engaging with me. And I stopped teaching and I asked them, look, what's wrong? What's happening? And then they informed me. So that could be a simple idea, but it's a very important idea because they also have the need to learn. But no matter what, no matter how powerful, how strong that need to learn is, a situation can turn things around. And if as a teacher you can't read the situation, you can't read the mindset of the student, you can't be empathetic, puts you in a risky position as a teacher. So that empathy factor is critical. Okay. The third is that you have the freedom to speak. Now, yeah, would say, come on, hey, everybody is free to speak. Freedom of speech is a human right, a fundamental human right. I know, I get it, but that's not what, when I say that you have the freedom to speak, it's beyond, just like that audience, beyond just having your having that right to speak something, right? It's the ability to say something, and the fact that your speech matters to the people. I mean, if you haven't been a teacher, it takes years and years for a general audience to give some credit to what you're saying. But as a teacher, you already enjoy that luxury of speech, where the words that are coming out of your mouth has a lot of value. It has a lot of intrinsic value that the audience already embodies. So if you're a teacher with a good reputation, okay, and it's the first class of the entire session, students already know who you are, which means your reputation precedes your face value, which means that the students are walking into the class with the idea that this person is a reputed teacher and is going to come and say things, and those things are going to matter a lot. That is the sort of power I'm talking about here. So if you have that sort of power, if you understand the powerful nature of the freedom to speech that you have in that platform to that audience, you can do a lot. I've harnessed that. I've harnessed that power. I've seen the power that it holds. And that is why there's a major risk factor involved. You have to be very mindful, because the things that you say really matter a lot. And if you say the wrong thing, because in the class you have the freedom to say anything, correct? And teachers would agree with me. You can say the right thing, you can say the wrong thing, you can say the sad thing, you can tell your personal story. I've had hundreds of teachers who used to come to class and share stories with us, which are completely unrelated to the subject matter they are supposed to teach. And we carry those stories throughout our entire life. We remember those stories. And I am a storyteller. Okay, I don't know if I'm a good one. I think I'm a good one. I think I'm the best. But okay, this you can say the disappointing thing, you can say a hurtful thing, you can say the right thing, you can say the wrong thing, you can say the kind thing, you can say the nice thing. Okay, there's so many things, so many variations to the things that you can say. That is why you have to be very mindful. So when I started early on, when I started teaching very early on, I was not very mindful of the things that I said. I remember there was a class where I was mad. I gave a break, and during the interval I saw the behavior of some of the students, just a very few students in the class, and it was not really rude behavior also. It was my perception of that behavior which was completely inaccurate, and I come to the class after the break. I was so pissed off and I started screaming. I started scolding the students, and two kids ended up crying. They started crying in the class. This is like way back in 2011. And I will never forget that day. And that is the last day that any student has cried in any of my classes because of something I said or I did. You have to be extremely mindful, because you're dealing, we'll get to that, but that is the risk, and that comes with that power you hold. Just because you have the freedom to say anything, you shouldn't be saying everything that you want to say. You have to be very mindful. I talk a lot about mindfulness on a separate note. We focus on developing mindfulness in a lot of, we dedicate a lot of time to that. But think, if you're a teacher, if you want to be a teacher, if you have that platform already, if you're already up and coming teacher, think about how mindful you are about the things that you say. If you tend to deviate a lot from, or if you are a storyteller genuinely, because good teachers are good storytellers, and they, whether the storytelling is good or bad, they tell a lot of stories, and those stories get picked, and there are lessons in those stories, and that is important. Yeah, which is why being mindful is critical. And if you are not mindful, it can put your entire session at risk. That brings me to the fact that you have the authority. Now, by authority, what I mean is that you command a certain sense of authority in the class, command a certain sense of authority over the audience. Now, in Sri Lanka, in my country, of course, what happens is there is this predetermined sense of authority that as a teacher you have, but that is something that I've been distancing myself from. I try to, especially because the classes that I teach are very senior classes, I tend to maintain a sort of equal nature, but doesn't mean that I don't have a certain command over that audience, because that is very important, and it's a very important power. Because if you have a class of 10 students, it's not only about one student. No. So if you cannot let the class go out of control, because there could be 3 students, let's say there could be 8 students who don't like the way you're, who have a bad sense of what you're teaching, right? Maybe their perceptions are wrong, maybe they haven't worked, maybe they haven't done their homework, maybe they don't have the right mindset, maybe they're not there because they want to be there. Okay? But there could be a few students, right? Considering that it's a few. So let's say here in this example it's 8 to 2, there could be 2 students who are genuinely focused on what you're doing, and it could, maybe their entire life is dependent on the fact that they learn this right. So if those 2 students don't get to learn because your sense of authority and you lose command over that audience, becomes a problem. So, for example, in my classes, in the first class, I have these 3 rules, out of which one rule is that in my class, सिर्फ एक ही don होता है, right? In my class, there's only one don, and that don is me. I say it very playfully, but it's something that I say to tell the class in a playful way that, look, guys, we're gonna work together, and we need to do this right. But please understand that I have a certain amount of control over the class, right? So with that understanding, let's move forward. It's that idea that I communicate, this sense of authority, which is why the risk factor is that you have to be flexible. You shouldn't tell your mind that you have supreme authority over this class. That never works. I know situations where students have boycotted the class and have pushed out teachers, have completely pushed out teachers from delivering that session and demanded that they need different teachers. And the problem is not that the teacher's delivery was bad. The teacher could be doing there are hundreds of teachers, and students have tolerated me. There have been sessions that I haven't been doing my best. And even during those sessions, students have tolerated me because there are other factors that makes a teacher a good teacher. And students also have a certain sense of empathy. But when a teacher starts to abuse the level of authority they have, or mismanage the level of authority, it could work either way. It could be that a teacher cannot really exert the amount of control. Now I see that a lot in school classrooms nowadays, especially the grade 10, 11, that sort of age 16, 17, 18, right? Because those classrooms can go out of control, and you really can lose control if those students don't respect the teachers. So when we were in that age, we'll have 8 periods, and out of the 8, there'll be 8 teachers who are coming to the class, out of which 6 we would absolutely love, 1 we would fear. Out of sheer fear, we would just stay silent. But there'll be 1 or 2 teachers we don't respect at all because of this authority factor, because they don't know how to. I understood it later, much later, when I became a teacher. But there were teachers who are unable to exert that control, and there are teachers who sort of abuse the amount of authority they have. Both of these things can be very dangerous. That is why flexibility is important. You have to be flexible, the teacher. That comes from the awareness that your sense of authority is only limited to that classroom, and that you need to really earn that level of respect that you're anyway going to have, which is the next point. As a teacher in a classroom, you anyway walk in with that sense of earned respect, especially if you're a reputed teacher, because then students already know who you are. And what happens is that when you walk into the class, you can sense that the students have a certain amount of respect, but that respect only can last for so long, right? Just like that saying that to earn respect, you have to give respect. The idea here is that you have to maintain the amount of respect that you have in your class. And that the major factor, especially for a teacher or a trainer or a coach or a mentor, right? Someone who is in the position of sharing knowledge, the main way, right? And that is also a key risk angle, because I see a lot of teachers who don't have this. The problem with earning and maintaining a certain amount of respect is by being competent, by being a good expert, being someone knowledgeable, being someone genuinely competent in whatever particular area of expertise that you're supposed to teach. If you don't know, if you're not good, if you don't really understand the things that you're supposed to teach, how are you going to convince the student to learn in the first place? And this is a fundamental issue I'm seeing among teachers, because if you're a teacher, or doesn't need to be you, right? Whoever it is, if you're watching this, and if you have become a teacher, and if you've accepted work that you're not really competent at, that's an issue. So either the first thing you need to do, either you need to back out of that game. You need to back out of that class, that responsibility, because it's a serious responsibility and you're not as competent as you should be. But if you are not competent, there's another thing that you can do. You can actually start learning. You can put in the effort. There are a number of things that I have put in the effort to learn. Say, for example, in terms of marketing, I have Kotter's book here. I've started reading it in so much detail to learn marketing, because it's an area that I've been teaching, and to expand on the idea, to go to that next level of teaching, I know that I don't know enough. So I need to read and gain that expertise, gain that knowledge, apply it. And I can give you a good example. Fundamentally I'm a performance management lecturer. I teach students. I train in my consultancy role. I train trainees in how to manage performance. So how can I, when I started teaching, I used to teach management accounting fundamentals. So by the time I hit the second, third year of teaching MAF, management accounting fundamentals, which is something that is at a basic level, I realized that most of the things I'm teaching are supposed to be things that are happening in companies, but I haven't really seen them happening in companies in the first place. So if I haven't really seen, and if I haven't really done business management, how the hell am I supposed to teach business management? This was a big problem that was just nagging my head, which is how my corporate journey began. So today, I have been a manager, I have managed operations, I have been in planning, I have been in sales, I have done all this, and now I'm sharing my knowledge and expertise while also applying it parallel. So you have to be competent, right? Now, I will never command a certain amount of respect that I would command in a business management space. I wouldn't command it in a music class. Right? And music reminds me, right? And it brings me to this final point. The thing about being a teacher and the fact that it's always a balanced game, and you have to consider both this, the power factor and the risk factor, is the fact that most importantly, the power and the risk of matters is you have the opportunity to influence a human life. That is the most powerful thing about being a teacher, and it's also the riskiest thing about being a teacher. I don't see people understanding the seriousness of this matter, and I say it with every good intention. Teaching, training, coaching, mentoring, this sort of thing is unlike any other job, right? It's not even like being a doctor. Okay, it's not like being a lawyer. It's not like being a factory worker. Not like being a supervisor, right? It's not like being a corporate management personnel, right? It's not like doing a corporate job, because you're really engaging with human lives that are attuned to the fact that they are supposed to listen to you. They will come to you. They will give heed to what you say. They're listening to you. They're not just hearing what you're saying. They're really listening to you. They're trying to absorb what you're saying. So you have a platform, you have that audience, and you're using a very powerful level of freedom to speech. You command a sense of authority, and you have a lot of respect. So if you have all that, you need to be able to deliver it confidently. You have to empathize with your audience. You need to be really mindful about what you're saying, and you have to maintain that sense of flexibility to understand, and that comes with empathy, because you understand that they are also human lives. And most importantly, you have to know what you're doing. You have to be competent. Okay? All of this culminated together is how you can influence a human life, and that is the most serious matter here. Teachers have that power to influence a human life. My teachers, it was my teachers who shaped my life, the good and the bad of it, at least a serious extent of it. They had a lot to do with how I turned out to be. My perception of teaching comes from a really good arsenal of teachers I had. I can name all the teachers who have taught me. I'll probably forgotten the names of a few, but I remember everyone's faces. If I have learned from 200 teachers, I probably don't remember about 20 names. I am seriously sorry, teachers. But like, especially teachers, like I can name names like Professor Nimal Hettiarach. Okay, Mr. Ranjit Chandrasekhar, right, our principal sir, right, Anoma madam. There are so many teachers. Okay, like if I start naming teachers at Kingswood College, where I studied, this video is gonna take much longer, because each and every teacher. Okay, I can't forget some names like Mr. Kapila Priyant, Iowa madam. Okay, Jayanta madam. Right, there are so many teachers who shaped my life. Right. Today, when I look back, I also, from the things that they did, I also know what to do and what not to do also. All that knowledge comes from them. So as a teacher, if that seriousness of the matter can be understood by you, it's a really powerful thing, because you have the opportunity to influence a human life, and therefore you can either make or you can break. That awareness is critical. If you're a passionate teacher, all this is coming. Why am I doing this video? I'm doing this video, I'm telling you all this, I'm sharing everything that I now am unable to share in person, because all my teacher trainings have stopped. I'm using YouTube as a platform to share all this, because my personal notion about teaching is that You should not teach if you're not passionate about it. You can do any other job, most other jobs, you can do them. But not teaching, it's a huge responsibility. It comes with a lot of power, but it also comes with a lot of risk. And the risk doesn't only apply to you, it applies to other human beings, and that's the problem. That is the problem. You can be a driver, okay? You can be a factory worker, like I said. You can be a lawyer, and you can command a lot of power. You can be a CEO. But all of those jobs are unlike being a teacher, because you're literally dealing with people. I'll tell you a good story of something that broke me. I was very young. I was about 11, 12 years old. So I'm very weak in music. I love music, okay? But what happened was, there was this event at college for which there was a welcome song to be sung. So they rounded up all the little, 12-year-olds, which included me, and the music teacher took us to that to the music class, and for the practice session. So now we are all there, and the song was printed on a leaflet. It was shared, and first the teacher sort of sang it to give us the tune, and then asked us to sing. So I was also among the group of about 20 kids who were there, and I started singing the song. Because I had never learnt music, I just didn't know how it worked. I just started singing like everyone else, and suddenly the teacher says, "Stop, stop, stop! Okay, there's one bugger somewhere here who is going out of pitch or out of tune or something like that, right?" Like, she looked really upset, really mad, and it was clear that whoever that kid wasn't doing the right thing. So she asked to sing again, and we started singing. Then about 30 seconds later, she was like, "Stop," and she pointed at me. "You come out." So I came out of that batch. Said, "You don't know how to sing? Is this how you sing? You're going out of whatever, whatever." She had all this music jargon, right? She was pointing at me, and she asked me to get out from the class. This happened at Kingswood College. Okay, which is something I'm not regretting. I'm a little sad. That day, it broke my heart, and I was walking out, and that gave me the notion that I couldn't sing, that music was not something I'm good at, and it distanced me from something that I really loved. And I have no grudge against that teacher, right? She is someone I've worked with a lot. I don't really hold a grudge, and in a sense I'm thankful, because this lesson is powerful, and I've used this lesson a lot in my life to stop myself from doing something that devastating to a student. But later in life, when I started learning a little and opening up to the kind of ideas within music, people and some teachers have told me that I have a certain affinity to music, which has now it's too late. But the issue is that that particular incident completely broke me, and I could have probably been a really famous musician today had it not been for that incident. Okay, so that's the thing about being a teacher. You can make or you can break a human life. This is a very powerful idea. This is a very useful idea. Knowing this, being aware of this, knowing that as a teacher you hold a lot of power, but there's a lot of risk that comes with it. Therefore, you need to properly balance it out. The critical part, no matter what you teach. Yeah. So I invite all of you to ponder about this, to ask yourself about these things, to question yourself, to see if there are gaps, to see if you can do better, be more humble as a teacher, and be open to the idea that you can actually change a human life, because you have a lot of influence, and therefore you need to be very careful and Also be open to the idea that if you're not really passionate about it, and if you're dealing with if you have the opportunity to deal with a lot of human lives, that you got to be a little more careful and you got to think it through before you pursue that as a entire career. Yeah. And if you are in that career, brilliant, right? It's a really remarkable thing, a very fulfilling thing to be a teacher. I hope this helps. And I want to actually read out something that I got from a student. Okay. And I felt like this was heartfelt, and she is actually someone I worked with on several occasions throughout several subjects. And it's one of the most beautiful feedbacks I've got to my work. Right? You tried your level best to teach us about life, shared your experiences, thoughts, opinions so genuinely, and also you gave us a chance to voice our thoughts as well. As you didn't criticize us, but listened and appreciated and told us how important and valuable our thoughts are. On the last class, you gave us a chance to talk about values and what we think. I'm thankful for giving us that chance to express what we really feel. It didn't take much long time to understand that few of us together with you are in the same page and share same thoughts. And it's just that we miss real guidance and a lecturer friend like you. And it lifts my heart that I'm able to hear something like this from a student. And it makes me want to be better. It makes me be very cautious about the things that I do. And it makes me understand the severity of the responsibility I hold, of the power I hold, and of the risk of how I can impact and influence another human life. And that is the same situation you're in if you're a teacher or if you want to be a teacher. So understand that. It's a really wonderful thing. I hope that this will be a lot to take in and will give you a lot to think about and will help you be better as a teacher. All the very best. Keep teaching, keep learning, be happy, keep smiling, and stay safe. This is AZB signing out.